Hey everybody, it's Dr. B. Have you ever wondered why your baby learns to drop the F-bomb before they learn how to say things like please or thank you? Well, it has a lot more to do with survival than it does to do with language development or anything else like that. So, of course, initially there is the shock value. Babies pay attention to things in their environment that are interesting and surprising and emotionally charged. So whenever a whenever a word is dropped into the environment that has an emotional charge behind it, like, hello, the F-bomb, or oh, blank, babies they tune in, they're already ready, and they're thinking, what was that? That was different than the normal, hi baby, what are you doing today? So that's important because in survival, we need to be able to pay attention to the things that grab us emotionally and that might alert us to danger. So it makes perfect sense that a baby's brain is wired to grab onto those things early on in their environment. And so that helps to protect them across the lifespan. So they pay extra attention to things that are said with an emotional charge. So at first, it's always fun. It's funny, people say, cuss words in front of babies long before we ever believe that babies can hear those words, understand those words, give any meaning to those words. And that's actually really true. Babies don't know what you mean when you say, oh, shit, or, F that. They don't know what the meaning is. They just know that it means something because it came out with an emotional charge, with big feelings. And so, so what happens after that is that they're curious. They're curious about, why is this language different? And so they're logging that into their brain. 6 months, 5 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, and then 10 months, 11 months, 12 months to 2.5 years old, they start practicing and they start using that word or phrase that you thought, oh, they didn't even hear. Well, part of that is because receptive language comes way before expressive language. And a real quick review on what that means is that you can understand a lot of words in context when they're said to you, but you don't have the ability to use them expressively, like in a sentence, until much later. Your brain has to kind of chomp on that for a while in order to be able to use a word that you've heard accurately and effectively in your language a while later. Well, that's true for babies. So I have a kind of a funny story about that because I had two littles at the same time, and my 11-month-old daughter, I was walking in the kitchen one morning and I opened the refrigerator and a jar of pickles dropped on my foot, and I of course yelled, oh shit. And she was standing right there watching me. She didn't particularly have any big reaction to my big reaction. And I cleaned up the mess, put the pickles away, didn't really give it a whole lot of thought. Later on in the afternoon, I picked my older son, who was 5, up at school. And so we're all in the car. And all of a sudden, the baby in her car seat starts saying, oh shit, in a very cute little sing-songy voice. And I think, alert, panic, we're going to my in-laws over the weekend and they're gonna lose it if my baby is saying, any kind of a cuss word. And so I said, oh, no, baby. I said, oh, shirt. And I tried to distract her from the word that it had initially said, just to get her off track. Well, my son, who was 5, said, no, mom, no. She's saying, oh shit. And he starts enunciating it loudly in her ear and in my ear, so I would understand. He's not using it as a quote unquote bad word. He's just trying to help me understand what's going on. So as you can imagine, it was a pretty funny and disturbing moment in the car. But at the end of the day, it's all natural. the tone that we use words sends a message to the brain that says, this is really important, you should pay attention, or this is kind of everyday average stuff, you don't need to give it as much attention. And so on that day, I gave a lot of attention to that pickle jar falling on my foot, which made the baby react by doing exactly what she was supposed to do, which is learn how important things are when they're emotionally charged, and how that tells us if something is safe or not safe, or also just feeds into all the other emotions that we have. So babies prioritize things that are new and novel. I don't walk around the house saying that all the time. And so all of a sudden, this new novel and heavy response sent her a message saying, that was kind of fun. It's like a new game or a new song or something. So it's important to know that babies don't learn how to cuss out of just typical normal language development. They learn how to cuss out of emotional development. And this is actually a good thing, even though we don't necessarily want our babies wandering all over the place, cussing and saying, awful phrases to people in the grocery store or at church or at their a family gathering or something like that. It's cute at the beginning, and oftentimes it gets a reaction. And this is another thing that happens for babies. We feed the fire by having an emotional reaction to them saying it. So immediately when a baby says, something, get the F away from me, then it's in context, it is funny, but yet what happens? It wears off. It wears off because they then begin to say that phrase over and over again, and now it starts to become a problem. And so it's a normal process. Nobody gets through babyhood. Nobody has a baby that doesn't say a cuss word here or there somewhere. Where it does become a problem is like in the last video when we talked about spanking or, disciplining, is when the funny part wears off and now the baby starts being in trouble for using the word that they learned in the environment with adults who literally taught the baby the word, and that it does have an emotional charge. And so what do we do about that? Like, what do we do when the baby is still cussing, and even in, now they're in kindergarten and going to school and saying terrible phrases? Well, we have to take a step back. And one, we have to re-neutralize that word. We have to take that word and make it less effective. So rather than having a big response and reaction to them saying the word, we have to be way more neutral about it. Like, I don't care about the word. You can say the word, but it's not necessarily an appropriate word to say here, here, or here. So I'm going to give you some private time, and you can say that word as long as you want to say that word, as long as you say it privately in your bedroom or privately in the bathroom or whatever makes sense in the car. So what we do is that we're trying to neutralize this word and not get a reaction out of it, and start setting the stage around boundaries about certain words and certain things. But when we respond with harsh discipline around the word, especially when littles have learned it from people that they love and care about, and we use cuss words much more often in our culture today. They hear this kind of language on TV and around lots of people. So it really isn't fair for them to get in trouble for it, because it's part of their modicum. Like, it's just part of the world today. So step back, remember that we're reinforcing it every single time we laugh at that. Every single time that we give it any attention, we're reinforcing the use of cuss words or bad words or any behavior. But neuropsychologically, babies need to be able to attend to the emotional things that happen in the environment, because that is an alert to their system this might be dangerous and I need to pay attention. So on the flip side, we can celebrate babies cussing on some level, but we have to be realistic about how then we manage that behavior going forward. So with that, if you like this video, please check the like, definitely subscribe, leave me a comment if you agree or disagree. I'd love to hear it. And again, leave a life print. I'll see you next time. Bye.